On September 22, 2025, the Supreme Court delivered a seismic rebuke to President Trump's sweeping Liberation Day tariffs, declaring them an unconstitutional overreach of executive power. The court's decision drew a clear line. Only Congress can levy broad taxes on imports, not the White House. This ruling didn't just challenge a policy, it reasserted the separation of powers at the heart of American democracy. The legal battle began with small businesses and state attorneys general, who argued the tariffs threatened livelihoods and strained budgets. The case raced through the courts, reflecting the urgency and high stakes for the economy. Today's judgment is a pivotal moment, forcing a national reckoning on the limits of presidential authority and trade. The implications are immediate. What happens to prices, to the billions already collected, and to the future power of the presidency? The answers will shape the next chapter of American economic and constitutional law. To grasp the Supreme Court's decision, you need to understand tariffs, a tax on imported goods designed to make foreign products more expensive and boost domestic industry. President Trump championed tariffs as a weapon in his America First agenda, arguing they would protect American jobs from unfair foreign competition. In April 2025, his administration imposed the Liberation Day tariffs, a flat 10% on nearly all imports, with even higher rates for China, Canada, and Mexico. The White House justified this using the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEPA, claiming the flow of fentanyl from abroad was a national emergency. Trump framed the move as reciprocity. If other countries taxed U.S. goods, America would do the same. But the sweeping tariffs sparked fierce opposition at home. U.S. companies warned of disrupted supply chains and higher costs, while economists predicted price hikes for consumers. The use of emergency powers for broad tax policy ignited a legal firestorm. Businesses and states challenged the president's authority in court, setting the stage for a historic showdown. The battle over tariffs became a test of constitutional limits. The fight began in the U.S. Court of International Trade, where importers argued that only Congress can impose taxes like tariffs. They claimed the president's use of IEPA to create a sweeping new tax regime bypassed the legislative branch. The administration countered, insisting IEPA gave the president broad power in emergencies. In May 2025, the court sided with the challengers, ruling the president's actions illegal. Judges found IEPA allows regulation of commerce, not the creation of new taxes. The administration appealed, but the Federal Circuit upheld the lower court's decision, stating tariff power is a core legislative function. The White House was left with one option: appeal to the Supreme Court. On September 9, 2025, the justices agreed to hear the case, recognizing its national importance. The country watched as the fate of the tariffs and the scope of presidential power hung in the balance. The legal journey was swift, but the constitutional questions it raised were profound. The Supreme Court's decision would determine not just the future of tariffs, but the boundaries of executive authority. The stage was set for a historic ruling. The suspense ended with a landmark 6-3 decision. The Supreme Court struck down the Liberation Day tariffs as unconstitutional. Chief Justice Roberts, writing for the majority, emphasized that only Congress can impose taxes and tariffs. The court ruled that IEPA's broad language does not grant the president the power to create a nationwide tax on imports. If Congress intended to delegate such authority, it would have done so explicitly. The decision drew a sharp line between these tariffs and those allowed under other, more specific trade laws. The ruling was bipartisan, joined by both conservative and liberal justices, underscoring its constitutional, not political foundation. The court reaffirmed that executive power, even in emergencies, has limits. The boundaries of trade authority were reset, restoring Congress's central role. The Supreme Court's decision triggered immediate, polarized reactions. President Trump denounced the ruling as a disgrace, accusing the justices of betraying American workers and vowing to keep fighting. The White House called it a dangerous infringement on presidential power, warning of economic fallout and weakened leverage in trade talks. Treasury officials predicted dire consequences for U.S. negotiations and national security. Meanwhile, critics of the tariffs, Democrats, business groups, and consumer advocates, celebrated the decision as a victory for the rule of law. Lawmakers hailed the ruling as a vindication of Congress's authority over trade. Small businesses and industry groups expressed relief, saying the decision would stabilize supply chains and restore certainty. The day was marked as a landmark win for constitutional checks and balances. With the tariffs struck down, the economic impact is immediate. Consumers are expected to see prices drop as the hidden tax on imports disappears, easing strained family budgets. But the government now faces a massive challenge, refunding billions collected under the illegal tariffs. The process for distributing refunds is unclear and could create a significant hole in the federal budget. The loss of tariff revenue will force tough choices: new taxes, spending cuts, or a larger deficit. For businesses, the end of tariffs means lower costs and more competitive pricing, especially for those relying on imports. However, domestic industries once shielded by tariffs may face renewed foreign competition. The ruling creates winners and losers, but most economists predict a net positive for the U.S. economy. The debate over how to handle refunds and lost revenue will dominate Washington's fiscal agenda. The economic ripple effects are just beginning. The Supreme Court's decision reshapes presidential power over trade for years to come. No longer can presidents use IEEPA to impose sweeping tariffs by declaring a national emergency. The executive branch must now work with Congress on major trade policy. The president still has tools, like Section 232 and Section 301, but these require specific justifications and are more limited in scope. The ruling restores Congress's central role in setting trade policy, reversing decades of growing executive authority. Lawmakers may now take a more active role, forging trade deals through negotiation and debate. The decision is a constitutional course correction, reaffirming the separation of powers. For Americans, it means future trade policies will be shaped by their elected representatives, not unilateral executive action. The immediate economic effects are significant, but the long-term legacy is a rebalanced system of government. The authority to tax imports is back where the Constitution intended, with Congress.